What would become?
Special permit went for outdoor dining for Farmhouse and Hearth in Masala, that nothing was mentioned about the rats. And once again, we are finding it out that they're back because it's infiltrated our playground. So Sai and Tara came right out and really helped us out, and worked with the businesses to try to remediate some of the problems, but it didn't stop it. Sai notified me about 2 or 3 weeks ago that the rats were back and very active. It's now very deep into the playground where the structure, it's like all soft under it. It's breaking a little bit. So I don't, the rats create tons and tons of burrows and they multiply like crazy. Now the whole entire fence, the lining, like where it meets, is all pushed up. The dirt is behind the fence onto the lot of, I'm gonna call it CVS Farmhouse. I don't know what you technically call it. I don't know. So all of our dirt that was like kind of near it is now pushed under. The rats have gone way deep in. I've had to put up cones so that there's no tripping hazards for the children. Over the summer, there were dead rats found on our playground. There's clear dumpster issues with CVS. I was told that their dumpsters had rat poop all over them. They didn't shut. There was a storage dumpster that was a mess, tons and tons of debris in between our two fences. And so now I know that there's some dumpster stuff that's going to be talked about, but I thought today would be a good time for me to come in because we met with Sai, who again has been great, but he's talking about prevention. And prevention is great, but what are we going to do right now? Because now it's going to be another thousands of dollars to redo the playground. It's kind of getting to like a point where, my teachers have to go out every single time before the kids go out to make sure there's no dead rats on the playground. The rats are out during the day. So it's not even like it's just, my husband went by yesterday at 7 and could see them running around. We were there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with Sai and they were running into the burrows. So the burrows are coming, they're underneath the playground, but they're coming from that lot side. We were told to cut down a crabapple tree that's been there for 40 years because crab apples may cause the rats to stay and feed off of them. But clearly the rats aren't there because of the crabapple tree. So now we're cutting down a tree. We're cleaning up leaf debris. We have to spend thousands of dollars to redo the playground again. And there's not a single fine for the restaurants. The dining is, I read the report and I'm not versed on inspection reports, but I didn't see a single thing about outdoor inspection. And I feel like if you know that there's a clear issue and there's literal like at least 10 rat holes there with activity, you would probably check outside to make sure that that's okay. And I'm just kind of been at a loss of what to do now. So we will do the cutting down of the tree, even though the crab apples have stopped dropping. We will make sure we do our cleanups. We'll make sure our dumpster is spick and span. going along with everything that Cy has asked us to do, but it's kind of like we're just sitting ducks waiting for everyone else to kind of get their stuff together in order for it to not continue to be harmful to Needham Children's Center, which is a shame because it had already happened in 2019. So we're back to square one, and I don't know. So maybe it's a discussion for a different day, but I felt like it was a good time to bring it up because of the dumpster finding or whatever that is.
Yeah, we didn't want to keep
So-
you waiting for
Yo,
45 minutes.
thank you. And
here.
I'll stay around.
But if
And-
you do stick around,
Yes,
you'll
definitely.
hear we are, entertaining some plans to address this.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you letting me come to speak. We have 24 little kids that just want to play outside, and they want to have a place where they can climb and not have to just have concrete ground because of fear of rats coming in. And we're in a different space than just kind of like rats in a dumpster in the Heights. Like we have a childcare right there, and we want to make sure that it's safe for the kids and that we don't just have to keep waiting for it to happen again and again. So, yeah, I'll be here, and thank you very much, Blaine.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else with any public comments before we get started? Okay, seeing none. We have a review of minutes from our last meeting. Any comments,
I have none.
corrections?
No recommended changes.
No?
Comments.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes.
In a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Yeah, we don't have to take it
Call
at
the
once.
names.
No, we don't have to. because- Nope, we don't have to do that.
You don't technically have to.
I'm sorry?
You don't technically.
Technically have to, right, exactly. So minutes are approved.
Mr. Chair, if I could
Yes.
remind, we didn't actually close either of the hearings last time. We continued them over. So don't necessarily technically reopen them.
Reopen, but we continue the hearing.
Yep.
Okay. And our first one is on Article 22, regulation for prohibiting the manufacture, sale, and distribution of synthetically derived cannabinoids. And I believe we have a new draft before us.
We do, and this
Or
reflects the changes that the board had requested previously that were not incorporated for the September meeting. So that's the removal of kratom, although as Dr. Partridge had mentioned, there is one synthetic kratom derivative that's still included under, I think, the last part of section 22.4.
Right, and the question that I had with the inclusion of psychoactive substances, which is an addition, along with the ballot question 4, what the implications would be if ballot question 4 passed for this regulation. So I don't know if you've thought about that. Tara, this is your item?
Section 4.
Hmm?
Um,
The whole thing is yours, but this is,
Yeah.
that's under, well, it's, you have the definitions, but under, section 22.4 prohibitions.
Right.
So no person shall manufacture, distribute, or sell, and here's the laundry list.
Right.
And I think question 4 would permit at least one of these activities. Is it specific to psilocybin, or is it specific to,
I'd have to
more
consult the
general.
text again,
okay,
but I don't have a good answer. I think I'd have to talk to town council and also Cheryl from the Mass Association of Health Boards to figure out what would happen if question 4 passed and we had adopted this regulation either before or after that.
Question 4 does not deal with distribution. It talks about growing it and possessing it. Now, does manufacture and grow mean the same thing? I mean, I guess that would be a question for council, but that might be one area where there's a little bit of conflict if that question were to pass and with this particular proposal.
Yeah, we create a National Psychedelic Substances Commission and an advisory board to regulate licensing, including the administration of psychedelic substances to individuals 21 years of age or older under licensed supervision.
Yeah.
Right. So that part aside, any other discussion or questions about the regulation as it stands?
Mr. Chair, I believe there was one person who had their hand raised online,
Okay,
if you want to recognize them.
sure. Who do we have?
Somebody named Black Cat 77.
I think that was Stephen Helper. Did you want to make a comment about, this is about synthetic drugs regulation?
I just put on the panelist, didn't disappear. Oh.
We on the
Sorry.
panelist now?
Yeah, but I hit non-participant view, so he probably didn't have his camera on.
Stephen Helfer? When Stephen spoke to me today, he said he wanted to make public comment about nicotine-free generation. So I don't know if maybe he raised his hand.
Is this Steven?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Stephen, did you want to make a comment about the draft synthetic marijuana and cannabinoid
I do
regulation?
not. I do not.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, one of the things we would have to get an answer for is the question of how this regulation would interact with question 4. One of the questions to the board is we took out the references to kratom, but we still included one of the synthetic derivatives of kratom, and whether that is something the board wants us to keep in or take out. And then there's sort of a more general question of, do you want the sort of psychoactive substances that have been added to food products included in this, or would it be simpler to take that out and deal with that topic at a later date?
right, so comments, questions?
I think we should leave synthetic kratom in this. They still have kratom at this point, so why should we allow another version of that?
My understanding, you know, we can go back to the minutes, is that the American Kratom Association was concerned about synthetics
Yes.
rather than the actual substance.
And I think the board didn't necessarily comment to agree on that, but said it was going to
Correct.
consider the benefits and detriments of naturally occurring kratom.
Mhm. So the synthetic wasn't actually an issue per se, so leaving that in doesn't kind of cause much
Great.
consternation is my point.
Okay.
Yeah, the only question is whether it's cleaner just to deal with kratom and synthetic kratom products all in one other document and not here, just so it's all together in one place.
And I think it's sort of to the board's taste. I think we could do it whatever way the board prefers. We could come up with a, this could be an all-encompassing regulation on synthetic derivatives of drugs broadly, or it could be narrowly focused on synthetic cannabinoids, and we deal with kratom and synthetic kratom, and we deal with mushrooms and other psychedelic.
For example, so I need to refresh my memory, and maybe Archie, you can help on this. Are there other synthetic isomers of 7-hydroxynitrogenine that we might want to include
Yeah,
in the kratom document? And if there are, maybe they should all be added here, or we should take this out
Yeah,
and keep them together.
I would keep the synthetic kratom and its derivatives, including metabolites, in this document, rather than deleting it. I think naturally occurring kratom extracts may be allowable depending upon the available data that will emerge out, but the synthetic derivatives of kratom and its metabolites should stay in this document.
Okay, so we should either add them or just add
Yeah.
a statement saying "and other derivatives of
Yes.
kratom."
Yes,
Okay,
that would be my recommendation.
okay.
Yes, and I agree with you on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I
just trying to think
that's
from
sort
a,
of covered by our language just before that, where it says, which contains psychoactive substances, including but not limited to.
I'm just thinking from a governance standpoint, when we have to modify anything, what the best way to divvy this up is, because otherwise we're playing whack-a-mole, right? We could have something on cannabinoids, we could have something on kratom, we could have something on whatever the next thing is, and something on psilocybin, and then something on the next psychedelic that comes out.
Yep.
We might consider dividing this into three categories.
Okay.
There is, the one category of everything that has been, legalized in the state. So that is cannabinoids at this point in time, and that may include psilocybin in the near future. We're not sure. We might actually, even if the ballot initiative passes, the legislature still has to pass it, right? So,
And I think it would still be subject to, I think it would not fall into the non-preemption category, so that
Right.
boards would still be empowered to adopt stricter regulations to protect the health of their community if they so chose.
correct. But you have that category, and then you have the stuff that is, clear that we don't have an answer for.
Yes.
Stuff like kratom and synthetics and what have you, where the FDA can't even act fast enough because the chemists at MIT and elsewhere are faster than the FDA. Just are. So, but that might be a way, from a governance standpoint at least, to address this, because there'll be some where there clearly are some state guidelines from which we can draw, and there are others where there are no state guidelines.
So maybe what we'll do, if it meets the board's definition, we'll go back and sort of restructure the regulation to sort of have those categories that were defined. We can review them with Cheryl. We can present a new draft for the board to consider. And that would potentially make it easier if there is a development in one area. We know we have to change section 5 or something. And we know we also have to update the citation to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regulation or the general law or something.
Right. That's just my notion. I want to make sure the rest of the board is, you can say it's a bad idea. It's okay.
I just think we should include it because it's an artificial substance. But
We can. We might just have, we might have a
restructure
second. We might
anyway.
just structure it as a separate regulation
Yeah,
for that.
so let's just, do what a revised version looks like.
Okay.
As Tim suggests.
May I ask a different question? What is the disadvantage in having it in here?
Because we'll be modifying this regulation. First off, we may be modifying this next month, depending on the vote that comes out of the state on question
On
4.
question 4.
So that's why
I see.
I don't think that we necessarily want to pass this now, because let's have the ballot. Let's see what the ballot
Okay.
question looks like, particularly in Needham, and we'll get that information.
Yeah, and if the board does want to sort of restructure or reframe for better understanding, then we owe the board and also the public the chance to see that, relatively final copy that the board is going to consider.
I think what you're hearing is in terms of, you're hearing pretty clearly, yes, synthetic credit is something that we do want to control.
Yes.
And, anything that's not, currently okayed by the state is something that we want to be controlling.
Yeah.
I do want to take into account the point that Rob made about any other derivatives of 7-hydroxynitroglycerin. So yes, it does say including but not limited to.
Right.
Yeah.
But given that we're not specifying the metabolites, one could argue that if there are other metabolites which are structurally different, then they are allowed. So that's where I like the language that Rob proposed about and its derivatives
Okay.
to be included in that.
All right.
I think we can.
If you-
Yep.
I can see that.
Yeah, which contains psychoactive substances or their derivatives or their derivatives.
Okay. That's good.
Okay. You can specifically incorporate that language. Yeah.
That's 22, 24, 22.
All right, that is taking us up to 6:50.
Can I ask a question?
Ask a question, Carol.
Is this, thank you, I am Carol Reed. Is this the diamond shrooms, is this related to the diamond shrooms? I don't
There was
pronounce correctly.
some news
Phyllis.
coverage. Yes.
Yes, so I just wanted to ask, so those products, those 2 products are Schedule, well, one is Schedule 1 against federal law. So just for clarification, Massachusetts has a ballot question, and if it passes, that would say it's legal here. And for us, we did a memo on this and it was in your packet. It's against federal law. So this board would then have to decide, like with marijuana, when question 3 passes, we want to make tighter regulations. Is that how I understand with the mushrooms?
They kind of go along the same way, right? Because, I mean, marijuana right now is still federally Schedule 1. They haven't changed it yet.
Right.
Yet, it is allowed in, we have regulation for medical marijuana in our town. Right?
In
So-
our state,
In our state and in our town, we have a dispensary right here that we regulate, right? So we're allowing something that the FDA does not, with full knowledge of it. So if question 4 were to pass, would there be similar regulation allowing, a licensed, I mean, you can read the language there, licensed provider, licensed professional to administer psilocybin and whatever derivatives, are there, to somebody? And is that something that we would want or not want? And it'd be, I think, prudent to see what the vote is in Needham and perhaps at town meeting.
And then there is the question of, we may have concerns about that generally, but the idea of synthetic derivatives being included as a food additive in a very,
That's
a very
different
unregulated
issue,
sense,
yeah.
and that is at least in part what some of the news coverage has been about,
Mhm.
is
Right.
sort of psychedelic additives to candied products.
so I'm just trying to understand, they're separate? Here, it would be separate, or if we allowed one, could we ban it in food, which young people have the access to?
We-
Or am I getting ahead of myself?
Maybe a little bit. Mr. Chair, if I could, I kind of worry that this is a little bit like having Mark Gottlieb here, is like a driver's ed instructor watching a bunch of student drivers try to figure out what they're doing. But you could feel free to add stuff if you would like, Mark.
I mean, this is so complicated. I mean, there's right now, and, I certainly defer to the judgment of this wise board in terms of perhaps, let's see where we are in terms of the ballot initiative before proceeding. But, there's questions of preemption and regulation. I do not envy your task here. It's very complex.
Right,
Which is why I sort of like the framework of this is what is currently legal in Massachusetts, and these are the stipulations that occur to it. This is not legal federally, this is not legal in Massachusetts, and here's how that applies. And I think, we can use as a general rule of thumb that with the exceptions of medical marijuana products that are added to food as a therapeutic, any other sort of food additive from these synthetically derived versions of these are not something that is currently allowed, nor I think something we want to be allowed in Needham.
We just have to parse the language carefully.
And then we got to run it by Cheryl and town council and maybe Mark.
Yeah, and
Few other people.
we need to see what, what the actual, sense of the community is about.
but it's different for the food.
Yeah, the ballot question is pretty careful about, licensed professionals, they don't have, they don't,
Two
well,
states,
yeah,
yeah.
but they don't have a definition for what that is just yet and what the qualifications are. There are a
Yeah.
lot of unknowns.
That's why I thought,
But if it overwhelmingly fails, this becomes very easy.
Yeah.
Right? So, and we just don't know where the
I
community is.
appreciate you all, and for 16 years, looked at your guidance, but also always want to at least,
And I think as Dr. Epstein had sort of said, we could be ending up amending this regulation every month, and we'd like to figure out how to structure it in a way that it would be subject to periodic reevaluation, but not, sort of the whack-a-mole type changes that seem to happen as
Right.
new contraband products come to
so
market.
the end, the food that parents have asked us about, the shrooms and That's different here.
I don't think anyone here is in favor of that. I think it's just a question of, do we want to include it in this regulation, or do we want a separate regulation for it? And what I've heard from the board is we want to include it in this regulation. I don't
And
think,
that will impact selling the diamond shrooms in this town
yes.
and give Tara and Cy the standard procedures that they usually do.
Yes.
So we're gonna wait and connect that to the outcome of the ballot question.
But also because it's a fairly substantial rewrite, we want to give both the board time to consider the rewrite and also the public time to consider and weigh in on the rewrite.
Thank you, always for helping me sort it all out.
All right, I'm going to keep this moving along.
Good idea.
I do want to make one change in the order, and it's not going to be too substantive because it makes sense to me that we talk about nicotine-free generation before we talk about, an actual vote possible and an article. And it is 7 o'clock. So with that, Mark, if you want to join us, and I don't know Maureen, but come on up as well. Leave your presentation for us on nicotine-free generation.
Well, hello.
Hi.
I'm Mark Gottlieb. I live at 43 Loomis Street in Cambridge. And I know there are certainly many issues that compete for the attention of this board. So I want to express my gratitude that you continue to attend to the public health impact of tobacco industry products here in Needham so faithfully. I'm the executive director of the nonprofit Public Health Advocacy Institute at Northeastern University School of Law, where I also teach public health advocacy to upper level law students. And I just want to note that while our organization, which has been working on tobacco issues for more than 40 years, does have a statewide contract with the Department of Public Health to provide support for smoke-free housing, we receive no funding for the advocacy work we do around this nicotine-free generation policy. Actually, most of our funding comes from attorneys' fees and litigation against tobacco companies, and those fees then go back into our broader public health mission. In fact, we represented the town of Brookline pro bono and successfully defending this policy from a legal challenge from the retail sector of the tobacco industry that went to the SJC last year, as I'm sure you heard, and it established this policy as a valid exercise of local public health power. We offered our legal help because we believe this policy creates healthier communities by gradually ending the sale of tobacco products without affecting a single retail customer who can be sold tobacco products today. If widely adopted, I think it'll make a huge difference, and one town at a time. Now, for example, in the current issue of the journal Lancet Public Health, there's a study that estimates the impact of a generational tobacco sales ban on lung cancer in 185 countries. And it finds that based on current trends on lung cancer and tobacco use, this policy would prevent nearly 2 million lung cancer deaths just among people who were born between the years 2006 and 2010. And I'll provide a copy of the of this brand new study, as well as a piece from the New England Journal of Medicine on this policy that was published earlier this year. And of course, groundbreaking public health policy is not new to this board. It took me 5 years to catch on to the Tobacco 21 strategy that emerged from, I guess, maybe this room to become, the national minimum sales age for tobacco. And I had the great honor of working with Doctors Hartman and Winikoff, spreading the news of Needham's innovative policy. And by the way, Needham's own Lester Hartman, I think, is truly a hero and warrior for children's health. And as you know from the last meeting, this policy is very important to Dr. Hartman. While the nicotine-free generation is designed to eventually end all tobacco product sales, in jurisdictions that adopt it, I expect it actually to have very positive near to midterm effects as well that build on what we learned from Tobacco 21. Older peers are a significant source of tobacco products for youth, and it's expected that there will be reduced youth access to tobacco through older peers with the progressive increase of the minimum age of those who are able to be sold tobacco products under this policy. Now, while a 21-year-old may still be an older peer or a sibling to a high school student, it becomes much less likely that someone in their mid to late 20s, after this policy has been in effect for a few years, would still be in a teen's social circle. This is the same effect that was forecast, in fact, by the Institute of Medicine in its model that it used to predict the impact of raising the minimum sales age of tobacco to either 21 or 25, which was issued after Needham's action. The IOM's modeling was important evidence, and it really helped support the national policy that, where this whole country adopted the Needham approach. Likewise, peers that are visibly demonstrating the use of tobacco products has been a predictor of youth initiation. And with fewer older peers modeling tobacco product use as a result of this proposed policy, it can be expected to contribute, I think, to a reduced tobacco initiation by middle and high school populations. Finishing up here, while for some, I think people have thought of this as a fairly radical policy, they may actually be in the minority. A CDC study published last year found that in a national survey, the majority of Americans favored a policy to ban the sale of all tobacco products, 57%. And I'd like to briefly address the concerns raised about contributing to black markets with this policy. I think one of the reasons Tobacco 21 was relatively easy to implement was because it was rolled out in a way that young people who were able to be sold tobacco were not suddenly unable to access tobacco through retail. There wasn't an established demand for which the legal supply was removed. And likewise, I think this proposed policy affects sales to a population, the next generation, where there is no established demand for tobacco products. And I think this is a key to why the nicotine generation will be relatively easy to roll out and enforce in Needham, just as it had been in Brookline over the last few years. Thank you.
Great.
Can you go next? I do have a packet for each of you, maybe send some across the table, and I've actually to the staff. I'm Maureen Busby. I live at 54 West Highland Avenue in Melrose, Massachusetts. I am the Regional Tobacco Prevention Program Coordinator. I work in 7 communities, and my work is funded by a DPH grant. In my role as Tobacco Program Manager, I've been inspecting stores and conducting youth compliance checks for 13 years. In that time, I've watched the evolution from pink and purple foil wrapped 69 and 79 cent flavored cigarillos that look like bubblegum, to jewel devices that look like flash drives, to pouches with higher and higher nicotine content. Just a couple of months ago, I'd see pouches with anywhere from 2 to 9 milligrams per pouch in a tin that looks like this. Very similar, by the way, to breath mints. I'm sure not an accident. But in the last few weeks, I've seen more and more companies enter the market, new brands every single week. I have some samples here. These are different brands of pouches that I bought in just the past few, either I bought or a youth has purchased in a compliance check. And you might not open these, they have quite an odor, even though they're packaged. Maybe just pass them down. I don't have one for each of you.
You can smell that if you want.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. And these pouches, where I used to see them come in nicotine content of 3 to 9%, which is what Zyn comes in, that's the most popular brand,
although there's a worldwide shortage right now. But the newer brands come in, they have a nicotine content of 14, 16, even 18 milligrams of nicotine in each pouch. For comparison, a pack of Marlboros contains 24 milligrams of nicotine. So 24 milligrams in a pack of cigarettes compared to 15, 16, 18 in a single pouch. And people are known to use 2 pouches at once, say, before they go into a gym. Boards in my region were early adopters of tobacco prevention policies like T21, not as early as Needham, flavor restriction, pharmacy ban, cigar minimum price, and permit cap. Some of these policies are now state law. But we continue to see new products, cheap products, discreet products, products designed to attract young users. The blue folder has some photos in it that I took while doing store inspections. And it also has, by the way, an article from a recent Commonwealth Beacon, which you may have already read. The first photo in your folder shows a new non-menthol cigarette that came out after Massachusetts banned all flavored tobacco products, including menthol. These so-called non-menthol Newports actually contained a chemical that tricks your brain into thinking that you were smoking a menthol cigarette. Some menthol smokers who had quit told us that the use of the original green Newport packaging was actually triggering to them. The next photo in the packet shows a Zyn promotion for the Zyn product, $3.49 a tin if you buy 2. By comparison, a pack of Marlboros is about $14. So more nicotine, much cheaper, and very discreet. The next set of 6 photos are shots of counter and shelf space increasingly taken up by nicotine pouches. In the small Ziploc bag that's stapled to the inside front cover are sample pouches, just in case you're not familiar with them. The next photo, the top left of the next photo, shows a gas station mini mart drawer that used to contain Marlboros and Newports that is now filled with tins of pouches, so the clerk doesn't even have to leave the counter area and can just restock during the day right from this drawer. The other photos on that page show the amount of shelf space taken up by pouches, an indication of customer demand. Next is a photo of a highlighter vape pen, which most parents would not easily identify as a vape device if they saw one in their kid's backpack. I've seen vape devices that have an LED screen, so you can see how many puffs you have left to make sure you restock before you run out. I have one here, and again, I have just one of these, but right on the package, you can see the little LED screen. So if you could just pass that down and maybe pass that around.
I'm gonna ask you
It's
just
like-
to conclude if we can, but I'm trying to bear in mind the time.
Pardon?
I'm trying to bear in mind the time. So if
Okay,
you can
I'll be
conclude. Thank you.
And it's like the range indicator on your car's dash, so you remember to gas up. It also shows battery life. This is tobacco industry playbook. Produce and market products that appeal to young people with plenty of addictive nicotine. Their motto is hook them while they're young and have a customer for life. The tobacco industry spends billions on research, development, and marketing. We've worked hard to reduce youth access, but we can't keep up with big tobacco. We need to do more. NFG puts us on a path towards a new generation where tobacco products in stores is not the norm. 20 years ago, boards like yours took the groundbreaking step of banning smoking in the workplace. Now we can't imagine going into a restaurant, theater, school, or hospital, or riding on a subway, train, or plane where people are smoking. Malden, Melrose, Reading, Stoneham, Wakefield, and Winchester, my area, have all adopted nicotine-free generation, an important step in protecting today's youth from highly addictive nicotine. Thank you.
Questions? I have one.
Yeah.
The harms from tobacco are very clear. Harms from nicotine, less so. I mean, we've heard some, evidence at our previous hearings. It's clearly addictive, as you said, hook them young, what have you, might have a customer for life. But aside from some of the psychological effects, we've seen cancer from nicotine. I mean, I want to, if we say, if this were just banning tobacco, I think it'd be a lot easier. But we're talking also about banning nicotine and nicotine derivatives as well. Right? So I want to make sure we're on sound footing in terms of public health harm from nicotine, just nicotine, right?
And I think there's no denying that, some of these products are lower on a continuum, much lower on a continuum of risk than Marlboros and the combusted tobacco products, which are the dirtiest way to administer nicotine to consumers. And you know, as I understand it, and I'm just a simple country lawyer, but you know, that nicotine is a tumor promoter, and it's certainly, particularly with young people, you know, affects the reward centers of the brain in a way that can't really be undone, and puts young people who become nicotine dependent at risk, probably not just for more higher risk tobacco products, but perhaps other substances that activate those reward centers as well, which I think is of great concern. And you know, I'm glad that tobacco products today are less likely to cause lung cancer and stroke, perhaps, than you know, our previous generations of tobacco products. But I don't think there's any good reason why a community should allow this industry to addict young people, another generation. It is an economic burden and a health burden. And there's just not, I don't think, a good public policy reason to do that. And I will be happy to submit under separate cover by email some of the research on the harms of nicotine itself, but I don't want to, you know, pretend that it's the same as you know, tobacco-specific nitrosamines and other products of combusted tobacco.
Questions?
Mr. Chair, I do have two people online with hands raised if you're amenable to.
Well, I think that concludes the presentation, and now we'll continue the hearing on Article 1, which naturally is on this very issue.
Perfect. And then
So-
allow them to talk after.
So yeah, so
Okay.
we can continue that hearing and see if there's anybody who would like to speak to that. And I think we have a couple of people on the line.
Stephen, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yes, my name is Stephen Helfer. I represent Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights. We received no funding. We received no from any source whatsoever. The CDC, I'm getting a feedback here, or a, is that my fault?
We can hear
Yeah, we can
you.
hear you.
Okay,
Not
very
hearing
good then. The CDC recently released statistics that are very important. Teenage vaping is the lowest it's been in 10 years. Teenage tobacco is under 2%. That is the lowest in recorded history. Adult smoking, according to Gallup, is at 11%. Again, the lowest in 80 years. I do not think there is a pressing need for further restrictions on adult behavior. Also, it's interesting to note that the CDC also says that 2 out of 3 adults who have ever smoked have quit, and that there are more former smokers now than smokers. So evidently, the addiction is not lifelong for most people. Now, there is a great imbalance of power in this issue. Most of the proponents for the tobacco generational ban, nicotine-free generation, are career tobacco control activists, many of them with legal degrees. The people whose businesses are going to be affected by this often are immigrants of color, and they have far less expertise in representing their interests before boards like this. These are convenience stores, liquor stores, and gas stations. Again, these are minority businesses who will be affected and whose owners have far less expertise to represent their interests. If this passes, it would mean that a 21-year-old could buy marijuana at 400 licensed stores in the state, alcohol, risk death in the military, be sentenced to death in a federal court, but couldn't buy a cigar. That sounds like a total imbalance of people's liberty as adults to make their own decisions. I ask you not to pass the tobacco generational ban. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who do we have next?
Looks like Peter Brennan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Again.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm joining remotely from thousands of miles away due to the miracles of technology, but thank you for having me. My name is Peter Brennan. I'm the Executive Director of the New England Convenience Store and Energy Marketers Association. We represent the interests of the 7,000 convenience stores throughout New England, including over 3,000 in Massachusetts. We have submitted written testimony. I'm here to bolster that by saying that we are opposed to the NFB policy. We're opposed to any restrictions on nicotine pouches. We think that adults do have the right to make their own choices about the products that they consume and what they put into their bodies. I think that previous speaker made some excellent points, and I would agree with many of them in that this is an adult choice. This is a product that is currently legal. This policy does not even attempt to impact youth usage, which is apparently the stated goal, but it only impacts adults. And who it will impact the most are our retailers, because if you can't purchase a nicotine product that you desire in Newton or in Lexington or in Medford or in any of these other towns that you've mentioned, well, then you're going to go to the town next door. And that applies to Needham too. So your retailers are going to get hit by this. The instant that you pass this policy, your retailers, the license and their business will be instantly devalued. Because if there's no future market for a product that people obviously want, then people will go to the town next door. So we oppose the policy and would hope that you would take into consideration some other facts and continue the discussion on this, because we're happy to contribute anything that you need from us. But we think it's a bad idea, bad policy, and we are opposed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have anybody here in the room? Yes.
I guess, I know that you guys have already heard from me before.
Yeah, but you still have to state your name
sorry.
and
Yeah,
where you live and all that.
Tashy. I'm from Needham. I live on 108 Newell Ave. And I guess I would just say that I do think it really is a youth issue, because it is affecting the rising generation, because adults will, who are born after a certain year currently, will continue to be able to buy these products. And I also think that I won't pretend like I know the facts off the top of my head, but I do know that while one of the speakers did mention that it may affect racial minorities who are owning these convenience stores, there's also a lot of parts of the tobacco industry that targets racial injustice. And even at some historically Black universities, tobacco companies would pass out free tobacco products to students to try to get them addicted, because they knew that some of these minority groups would have lesser access to cessation resources later on. So it was an easier group to kind of get addicted. And again, I won't pretend like I know the statistics off the top of my head, but I do know that there are a lot of disparities with the racial aspect of tobacco use and targeting with media, and also LGBTQ individuals. And I will say, like, I cannot speak on behalf of all youth, but I do think that there are a lot of youth who view it as an important issue and are very, I don't know. I do know, like, a lot of people who have said that they do think that they have been almost unfairly addicted to these products. I know people who have tried using Zen, and I had a friend who told me that she thought it would be the same as chewing gum because it looks like she's chewing gum, and now she can't quit. And I just think that that's Yeah, I don't know. I think that nicotine-free generation would make it a lot harder to access these products. And I think that that's important.
Thank you.
Anybody else here? I will note, just for the record, because equity has come up in the last several speakers, that we actually do an equity analysis of any policy that we're considering. And in our packets, there is an equity analysis of whether or not we would do this. And, Karen, I know you wrote this, so you can have the specifics. But the conclusion is that, all told, this will reduce health disparities and foster a healthy community for all, I think is the concluding sentence of the packet there. Any questions?
I just want to make one statement.
Yeah.
I am in favor of this. My only concern is if we pass this, we think we've gained victory. And it takes the focus off of cessation activities for people who are already addicted to smoking, who are over 21 and can buy the products. And so I would want us to make sure that we still provide cessation counseling activities to the population of already addicted people.
Stephen, I wanted to add one thing to we wanted to ask whether the staff would like to offer comment outside of their professional role on Article 1.
Does anybody have anything as a public health professional they'd like to say? Anybody online? Doesn't appear.
Okay, but yes, I thought there was it. So we've made the call for that. One thing in the reg that I wanted to just call attention to on page 8, definition of tobacco product. Right. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this right, and we're not going to play whack-a-mole. Recent edition of JAMA was focused on e-cigarettes and noted that a number of nicotine derivatives are also coming onto the market now under the radar. Well, the FDA knows about them, but can't do anything because they're technically not nicotine. So where it says for definition of tobacco product for this reg, unless we want to define nicotine differently as well, any product containing, made, or derived from tobacco or nicotine is how it's phrased now. That can be parsed a lot of different ways. So I prefer it say any product containing, made, or derived from tobacco, or any product containing, made, or derived from nicotine, because that makes it abundantly clear that nicotine derivatives are also included in this. It's not just, derivatives of tobacco or nicotine, it's derivatives of tobacco and derivatives of nicotine as well. I just think that would strengthen this. That way, when somebody comes and says, what we're selling here isn't nicotine, it's nicotine with an extra methyl group here and acts just like nicotine, but it's not nicotine. Mm-hmm. We can say that's a derivative. Sorry, no.
Good point.
All right. I don't know if we need to continue the hearing at this point. Tara, I'm going to take.
I know Cheryl Sabara had mentioned that she has some edits that she'd like to make to some of this because we had sent it to her for her guidance as well. So I think that's why we wanted to.
So we're still going to leave this open until November 22nd?
Yeah.
Which is our next meeting? Okay, so be it. We'll probably need to discuss the implementation date then, because we do need to give reasonable time, to the retailers to reprogram their systems.
Sure. Do you want to talk about that now or in November?
I mean, I think we could talk about it in November, but my own sense is you need at least 90 days notice before you're going to start something like this.
Which would start until like February,
March, yeah, something like that. Yeah, but to pass it in, if this were to pass at the end of November and say, hi, you got 30 days, January 1st, we're going to implement this. Or we could say, yeah, that's going to be the date, but we're not going to enforce it until, 90 days after, something like that.
January 1 and then
not enforce it. Yeah, the birthday is going to be a lot easier. Yeah. And then just not enforce it for the first 90 days or something like that.
So do we need to keep the hearing open though, or can we close the hearing and then in November we will discuss and?
That's my question to
Make-
Terrence and Tiffany.
Keep the hearing open.
I think so too, yeah.
Either that or close this one and have another one to then approve the changes that Cheryl Sabara makes to the.
Yeah, we might as well
regulation.
continue it because that way we can
Yeah.
continue to
Yeah.
take all that testimony.
Yeah.
Okay. Very well.
But we would anticipate in November, we will probably
Close it.
anticipate, close it and
And
anticipate
potentially a vote.
further discussion and vote.
Yeah, because we should have final edits to the reg at that point. So we need Cheryl's, we'll, tighten up the nicotine derivatives.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Very good. Thank you all for that. All right, we're about 15 minutes behind, not too bad. All right, dumpster regulations. Tara.
So, yes, so Cy and I had done our research on this topic, as you can see, thorough research, and Cy highlighted a few of these other city and town regulations. And I did add some to the packets, just so you were aware. But as you can see, and we also wrote an extensive memo giving you the reasons behind why we feel this would work in Needham. There's a lot of different variables, as you can see, why we're seeing an increase in these pests, which we've heard from other professional pest control companies as well, which you can see are in the memo. So we feel that this will give us more teeth to regulate and fine these dumpsters that are out of compliance. We liked how the dumpster regulation was separate from the waste hauler regulation. I don't know if you saw some of the other regulations we researched. Some of them had them combined and others had them separate. We liked the separate regulation because ours are very detailed as it is. The waste hauler, we want this to stand alone. So we were hoping you would agree with that. And yes, I think the towns and cities that we communicated with, like Lexington, I added their email back to me. They said this works really well in their city. And I also got an email from Arlington, and they also said it works well. And I asked them specifically about the staffing part of this, whether this would strain staff, and they said, no, actually it doesn't strain staff. You might get some, in the beginning while you find them, but they do start to taper off because of the fines. I mean, so we're hoping that the order letter along with the fining will help get these constant ongoing dumpster problems in compliance. So that is our thought towards this. So we have, we feel that this is something we should do in Needham, and I think it would help us enforce those requirements. So unless you have any other suggestions on what we should add, or if you feel this is something that would work in Needham, I'd like to know your thoughts on that. So.
I think that it's clear that we definitely need separate dumpster regulation.
Mhm.
And we need a clear mandate for this purpose. Because right now it's just too vague. Does DPH do it? Is it Public Works? Who's in charge of this?
Mhm.
And I think we need to just stake this territory out, take control of it. There is no question that there's a problem. I've seen rats myself
Mhm.
in places around town.
Okay.
And I hear it from people all the time. What are you doing?
Right.
And
Yes,
I
and we've been
think having consequences is really important to drive change. Also, just kudos to you all for all the research you did on this. This was very well put together.
Thank you.
And I'm just wondering if we can include some of the business owners, at least for feedback.
Sure.
I'm not saying that, the regulation's going to be based on what they want, but, it's good to get a point of view so we understand, some of the difficulties that they may be having and where the compliance issue is going to be.
Okay. Yeah, we can reach out to sampling of business owners.
And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the fees, or ask you about the fees, like, and I think we try to do fees to sort of recoup the costs that it costs the department to enforce the rules, essentially. For this kind of thing, I think we need to be able to identify who the problem dumpster is and be able, so we can act on it quickly and then fine. And then, from the email you got from the people in the other towns, it looks like that makes people comply pretty quickly. And this is an exploding problem, like Ed said, and like the testimony we heard, and we've got to get ahead of it. But I don't want it feels to me like if it's not that much extra work for the people that are actually enforcing the policy, then I don't think we need to go after big fees or make that a big burden for the local businesses. It's really more so we can get this under control.
Sure. Yeah,
I don't know, $100 fee from Arlington, is that, I guess that's reasonably in keeping with a lot of our other fees, but maybe $50 is better.
Well, there's
If we're
some
not
of
after
them
fees, we're after
Yeah.
compliance and reducing rat populations.
There was one that had like a tiered approach. They would start at 50 and then a second violation within a certain time frame would go up to 100.
That's a fine though.
A fine, correct.
But you're talking about fees.
Well,
A
right.
ticket.
I'm talking about fees to,
Oh, for
Yeah.
the dumpster permit.
for the permit, right?
Ah,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Permit fees.
Yeah, the penalties though, I mean, the mitigation costs the town a fortune.
Right. No, I'm talking only about the fee for the permit.
All right. And then we can definitely look at the ticket fee
Right,
separately.
yeah, we can talk about that. That's a
Okay.
separate issue.
Sure, we can look at 50 if that seems more of a reasonable price per dumpster permit.
Mhm.
That could be something.
I think maybe a survey of towns that have a dumpster regulation, what their fee is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think $100 is a big deal.
Yeah, we can double check again what those permit fees are. Okay.
Will there be a different regulation for food and restaurant owners versus all other businesses, or?
So we look at it as being, we would be mainly looking at the restaurants, owners and commercial properties at this point. So it would be in conjunction with, like, say, the food permit application, we would have like a dumpster permit application and it would go in conjunction with that. And they'd have two separate applications. That's the way we were looking at this initially, so.
I think administratively, your recommendation versus how you think it would be best to handle it would be important.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's helpful feedback. We can continue with that research and bring that to you for the next board meeting if you'd like.
So,
I can have a sample regulation written up.
Yes, that'd be great
Okay.
for the next meeting. Okay.
If I could just say something really quickly, I think a fine would be really necessary. I've sat in meetings with Side and Tara where they literally say to them, like, clean it up, fix it, and nothing happens. The doors break or there's stuff that's like completely off and there's just trash everywhere. And it's like, they're not there. Like, they don't see it, so they don't care about it. And then it really affects people that are living through it. So I feel like if there's a consequence for these people, it would be really helpful for those who actually like have to live with it. Not just kind of out of sight, out of mind by the owners of the businesses.
No, the town has expended considerable resources, for rat mitigation in the past.
Yeah.
I'm remembering that the whole gassing situation, I believe, behind Sudbury Farms not too long ago,
Mhm.
the train tracks. We need to recoup that money for the town. There's no reason that, if we have a few bad actors who, it's being caused because the dumpsters are out of compliance, that the town is picking up the tab for that.
Yeah.
So we'll try to build that in if we can. There are limits. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on dumpsters? All right, seeing none, we have an update on St. Mary Street. Is Cy on the
Yeah.
line?
So
Or is that gonna be you?
yeah, he's on vacation this week, so
Ah.
I'm covering that as well.
So you got that, okay.
I don't know if Joe is available.
Sounds like some slow progress.
Some progress, though. This is really
This is good.
good. It's moving in the right direction. So that's great. And so we did include some pictures here. I guess the biggest items that Cy wanted me to review as part of this is basically there are still some cars on the property. We have to remove those inoperable and unregistered cars. I think there were 7, he mentioned. 3 are located in the backyard and appear to be inoperable. The other thought I had was that police could actually ticket cars that are unregistered. we've had them work with us before on that, so that might be another option to kind of encourage that removal. There's also some piles of some construction debris and other plastic buckets, miscellaneous scrap metals and auto part items. So these items, obviously, we want to be discarded and organized, but it's recommended to have a private outside help be hired for this due to the number and size and weight of some of these items. So that is something else we had noted. The third item he wanted me to review is larger pieces of wood should be cut and then piled in an organized manner and off the ground, because they do have wood stove for their main source of heat. So that should be better organized. That does not pose as a potential hazard, rodent hazard. And then the last item is to work with building department on a pathway for compliance in order to correct those items on the back porch. That's the other piece. So those are the 4 items. So we're asking for you to vote on whether an extension should be granted if new conditions and requirements are placed in this case. So if that can be made clear on the current steps going forward with how to remediate the remainder of the items, then we would welcome your thoughts and feedback on that extension.
Okay.
And the resident was going to try to make it. You are here. So Barbara, okay, would you like to speak to the board and give the latest update? That would be great. Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Barbara Ardeen, 169 St. Mary's Street, Needham, Mass. Everything she said is true. My husband suffered a setback this past week. He's in the hospital and he has stroke. My son, who was seriously diabetic, also ended up in the hospital the next day. So both the men in my house are in the hospital and not doing well. Cy was at the house the other day. We did a walk around before he went on vacation. And I pointed out everything that needed to be done. And I do the best I can. But I can't lift a lot of the stuff that's in the yard. It's just too heavy. So, doing the best I can. I don't know how it's going to go with my husband because he got affected all on the right side of his body, the right eye vision blur now. So right now, I don't know. I'm at a standstill, and I know that you've given us time to get things done. And where he had the vertigo and he had serious pain in his head all the time, and they couldn't seem to help him. He was going to rehab, and it wasn't working. So he spent a lot of time bedridden before he even had the stroke recently. So this is where it stands right now, and I know you've given us time, and what I'm asking for now is maybe a lot more time to get it done. That's all I can ask for. Because right now, there's nobody helping me, and I'm trying to do it the best I can. So Cy said, well, if you can gather things up, and a lot of stuff, I go to the dump all the time, but it's stuff that I can deal with, a lot of clutter, small pieces and things like that. And, that's all I can say right now, is that's what's going on.
Questions, comments?
I'm sorry to hear that your husband was not well.
Yeah, not good timing, let me tell you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I understand that's difficult. One thing that nobody can lift is a car. So,
I know.
I don't know, if, cars are certainly things that junkyards will take, usually for free, because they can sell the parts.
I know that, and I've
So-
known that for a long time, but I'm dealing with a man that's very hard-headed and can't seem to part with certain things. And it's been very difficult for me to try to deal with him to get this stuff done. And everything comes to a standstill. It just doesn't happen. And I said to him, you've got to do something about these vehicles. I don't want them in the yard. I want my yard cleaned up. It's been a nightmare. And this is where it stands.
Well, they have to be moved. So
I know.
what's the plan for that? If he doesn't want to part with them,
I don't know. This is the problem. He needs to get rid of them. I don't want them. And he doesn't. He's at the point now where he thinks he can fix one vehicle with parts from another vehicle. It's not going to happen. he's got too much illness going on now, and he's in his 70s. He thinks he can do it, but I know he can't. And it's just hard to get it through to him that this isn't gonna happen. And, you know, it's difficult. So the only thing to say is that, you know, they just come and tow them away. You know. I don't know.
What if we ordered, placed an order, just said they have to be removed at a date certain, January 1 or whatever? And then the order kind of forces the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree with that. We've granted a number of extensions, and I don't think we can grant an indefinite extension because, I mean, the building is, you know, unfortunately, I mean, when we heard from the building commissioner, close to, you know, being condemned if that, you know, rear isn't fixed. You know, so that's going to be the most immediate issue, just so that the home is livable, right? But in order to do that, you're going to have to be able to work in there, and to work in there, you got to get the cars out of there.
I know. I understand all that.
Yeah.
I do.
Right. But if we set a time certain and say, you know, they have to be gone by then, and, you know, don't comply with that, then I'm not sure where we go from there. You know, I don't know if the town just, you know, goes in and tows them.
I think the cars are the most egregious problem.
Well, they're the heaviest, and they're the one that clearly, you know, clearly he's not going to be able to do. Right? That requires professional help. The other stuff, one could make an argument, you know, you could get a bunch of friends over, but no one's going to be lifting a car and moving 7 cars off the property.
Yeah. I think we should key it, the extension to the removal of the cars.
Yeah, I like the idea of a date with a deadline. It has to be done by that. That might be the way to push things over.
Okay, are we thinking January, what's the timeline?
I was saying,
January.
I just said January 1 off the top of my head. No,
End
2.5
of
months.
So by the end of this year? Yeah.
That makes sense, end of this year?
Then that gives you a little bit of
A little bit of wiggle room there. Yeah, I know. No, I
wiggle room,
totally
but also
understand.
something, you know, something to hold over. You know, we can quit.
I know. That's the way it ends up happening, you know, which is unfortunate. And he knows I'm right. He just won't give in. And that's very hard to deal with.
I understand.
And I know
It
it's
says
a
there-
cost, but there are, you know, junk removal services, not for the car, that's a separate thing, but you know, if you can't lift things and you need help, there's services around to do that.
Right.
It sounds like there's 7 cars there. In size,
there's-
it said there's 3
On the
inoperable
side of
cars.
the yard, there's one on one side of the house that he pulled up. And then, no, there's 2, I'm sorry. And then on the other side of the house, there's one vehicle, it's a truck, a pickup truck. And then we have his own truck in the driveway, and then he's got another car and another car, and then there's my car that I drive every day.
So it sounds like there's 2 cars that work and are registered.
Well, the ones in the front of the house are fine, but it's the ones on the side that probably are not registered at this point. I honestly can't even remember
Okay.
where it
It's a
stands.
unregistered vehicle.
Yeah,
Just to be specific about which ones we're talking about.
Well, somebody want to put that in the form of a motion?
I guess I could try and make a motion here, that we extend the time on this cleanup contingent upon the removal of all unregistered vehicles from the property by January 1st, 2025.
Okay, we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
Yes, any discussion?
Do we also include any mention about other things, that there'll be a continued effort to get rid of other items other than cars?
well, I can work on that. Plus, the guy that was helping him at one point got a full-time job. But now he's gonna have more time on the weekends, and he said he'll come and help us out. So that'll be a big plus right there, because he's a worker. He did a lot of work for us before all this other stuff happened.
So we want to leave some wiggle room, so something like substantial improvement, but
Yeah.
including the removal. of-
Continuing improvement
Mhm.
in other areas besides the cars.
Okay,
All right.
we have a second, so.
Yeah, so if everyone agrees with that, I guess we take a vote. Yep, and T'Challa's raised her hand. Everybody else, all in favor? Yes, okay, unanimous. Good. Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Very much. Appreciate it.
All right, let's see where that brings us to. Community zoning. I think Tim wanted to really do that.
Yeah,
one,
so
right?
he asked if he wasn't back, if we could do the staff,
Which we can.
staff reports and then
All right.
go back.
So let's see. Okay. All right. We put a decent order in here. So let's start with Talib, public health preparedness.
One quick sec, because I'll cover that with, let me just promote these. No, not totally too.
Yeah, he's right there. Gonna get your mouse to work there. There you go. We're gonna let you all in.
Yeah. Good evening. So my update for today, for the MRC update. In September, we highlighted National Preparedness Month, and we shared a preparedness resource and promoting FEMA Region 1 webinars. We also supported our nurse unit with vaccination clinics tasks. Also, we participated at the Needham Harvest Fair. We showcased MRC works and promoted emergency preparedness as well. For the second activity, we coordinated with Massport Logan Airport for Needham to participate with their full-scale active shooter exercise, which is going to be on 22nd, overnight 23rd. And we push the same activity to other MRC units in the region to participate as well. For the last activity, regarding the accreditation efforts, we reviewed the continuum of operation plan and provided feedback on the emergency staff activation. Also, we are continuing to finish up the public health emergency operation plan, and hopefully we submit it this week.
Any questions for the group? No? Okay. Very good. Let's move on to, thank you. Let's move on to epidemiology.
Oh yeah, I'll be covering that for Julie while she's out.
Okay.
Basically, we're seeing a little bit of uptake in the MWR over the past month, and imagine we'll continue to see that as we move into cold and flu season. A little bit of dip at the end there of September in the hospitalizations for respiratory, and same with the emergency department visits. I think the respiratory vaccination from the state is trying to get rolled out, but they keep having setbacks because the person that was doing it left. So at some point, hopefully we'll have that as well in here. But
When you say respiratory, you mean RSV or COVID-19?
so, well, I'm not sure because they haven't defined what they're going to put vaccination wise. I think it's mostly going to be COVID. But last year they did that really weird, like 20 to 40% were vaccinated, which was not great data. So they're trying to fix that. But they may add more in depending. Might be some flu, hopefully some flu vaccination in there as well. So keep you posted on that. Any questions?
I think done. All right. Nursing report.
Yes, so we gave out over 330 flu doses already.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. We're still waiting for COVID vaccines. And, we've done a lot of homebound residents, so I did tell them, and Hannah and I have been working with them to just keep in touch with them that we will be able to immunize them at some point. We just don't know when we're getting our COVID vaccines at all. which is a little frustrating. We did order more COVID tests. They somehow got lost from HHS. So I ordered them last month, but they should be coming in the next week or so. So we will have those as well. The other big thing, I'm sure you heard, we did have a pertussis exposure in one of the elementary schools. We had about 35 kiddos that were close contacts, so they were in the same classroom as this exposure. They were in the same lunch group as them, played recess. This exposure was also active in the community with a play and also at House of Worship. Oh yeah, it turned into a thing. I did write up a letter to be given to those close contacts, outlining everything that MDPH said, that if you're in close contact, call your doctor, get prophylaxis. If you're symptomatic, stay out of school, stay out of work, get seen, get tested. I did have a couple parents that were obviously frustrated, and I understand, but if their child is coughing, they go to the nurse's office, they gotta get home, they would be tested, and they would get treated. And a lot of parents were amenable to that plan, but then we had a few that were like, this isn't fair, they're gonna miss a lot of school, but they can't get penalized if this is coming from us in the state that they can't be in school. So as of the 3rd, I have not had any more positives from that school at all. And no more symptomatic kiddos.
That's how, well, when was the exposure?
So
Or when
she was diagnosed on the 12th.
All right, so you need 21 days.
Yeah.
So we're beginning to get to the end of the window now.
What was the vaccination status of the UK?
So that was another good part. They were all vaccinated. We had one kiddo that we were watching because they were unimmunized due to medical reasons. They weren't exactly a direct contact, but I did tell the school nurse to maybe tell the parents, just in case they needed to get treated anyway.
Yeah, puts Zithromax in the water.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do really badly.
Yeah. All right, anything else?
No.
That was enough excitement for a month. Any questions on the nursing report?
A little bit, a little stressed out.
No. Okay, is there some way we can get word out to everybody in town about the free COVID test? I mean, I know it's been mentioned in here. I ordered mine actually today, but it's available and you just have to go to the website and say, I want them.
Yeah, we posted it, we keep posting on social media, and I think, didn't Amy post it in like?
Last
using
week
them?
she did. We didn't do it. We can ask to be a running every
Yeah.
week for a while.
Yeah.
See if they'll
That'd be
keep
great.
that going.
Thank you. Okay. Environmental health, Tara.
Okay, so basically, we've been busy advancing our food safety excellence program with our updates. So we've now, as of September 1st, started posting the food inspection reports online. We've been able to have a redacted version. Our software coordinator for Foodco Pro was able to redact the pictures and, you know, the names, et cetera, so that they're ready just to post as we download them, that version. And so we have started doing that for reports conducted as of September 1st. So we're not really backtracking and going back and posting every single inspection report because that would take many days to download those and put them all up. So we're trying to get the word out to let the public know as they review those online reports that, yes, the other restaurants will be coming, but as we do the inspections, you know, we'll have them posted as we do them. So that's been live, and Amy has helped us with that. Amy Holson set up the website for that. So the other items that we've been doing is getting the word out on the new revised food code enforcement policy. We're going to be covering this topic as a central topic in our upcoming forum trainings that we've now scheduled at Powers Hall. We'll be doing 3 in-person trainings the first week in November, as well as 1 bilingual Spanish training. We might do another English virtual training depending on appearance at the mandatory trainings in person. We'll see how many people actually attend, but we're having them sign up to take, you know, a training. We sent out a survey, and so we'll know exactly who is coming and which days. And so we'll be sending out reminders to make sure that people attend. So we'll be covering the policy and the updates on the scoring, as well as the posting of the inspection reports, which we've already emailed everybody, letting them know that this is happening as well, but just as a enable for them to ask questions at the training. That's why we wanted to focus on that. We're also doing focusing on 5 or so top violations that we see during our inspections. We always do this every year, so we're going to be covering in depth the problem areas that we're seeing to make sure that if there's any questions or if they need resources to help with those five or six items that we always tend to write up, we'll be offering those resources as well for those trainings. So we're happy to have Pamela Ross-Kung do that training for us, and we're all taking actually a section of that training. So Cy will be doing a portion of the training, I'll be doing a portion of the training, Pamela will be doing the brunt of the training. So we're happy to do that and get the word out and get to know Pamela. I thought it was a good idea for all of our staff to be there so the restaurant owners and managers could get to know us, Cy, since he's fairly new. He's not new really anymore, but Monica as well as Pamela. So that's coming up. The other item I wanted just to focus on is the Speedway suspension. So that went off so they did the 2 weeks from September 16th through the 30th. And they also paid that $2,000 state fine as well. So that's the other item I wanted to talk about, unless you had any other questions. No? Okay.
Seeing none.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me get through all the pages. Accreditation. Is Allison come in?
Oh, Inland, yeah, they are not able to make it, but they said a lot of their updates are in their reports. So unless you had any other questions you want me to take back to them, but
T-minus 4 weeks and 3 days.
Yes.
Or thereabouts.
That's when we'll hear.
That's when we'll officially submit.
Yeah, got it.
So we're finalizing documents, we're uploading things.
Okay. Very good. Traveling meals.
Okay, so we did 807 meals in September to 48 clients. 42 were Springwell consumers, 6 were private consumers. We had, I'm sorry?
No one said anything.
Sorry. Okay, we had 4 new clients, 6 canceled the program. The kitchen at Beth Israel, they launched a new menu that's a 2-week rotation versus a 4-week rotation. And I included flyers for the cleanup, fix up, spruce up day that the Needham Council on Aging and the Exchange Club Needham are doing at the end of the month on the 26th. And I don't know if you want to pull up the graph, but meals are on a downward trend this year, which is kind of odd. So I just did a little research into it. We've got people that are in long-term healthy issues. They're just in rehab facilities. They're taking half of the month off here and there because they are being hospitalized. But the numbers are just on a downward trend. I just wanted to point that out in case you guys had any questions about it.
Still keeping with our 5-year average, though.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I can't display. It's giving me an error with Adobe.
Yeah, we have it in front of us, though.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all good. Okay, substance use prevention, part 1. Carol.
Hi, thank you. We, Lydia and myself, continue to work according to our grant mission, and the primary goals are to reduce underage substance use prevention and build prevention capacity in each of our 4 towns. The good news is, and I'm not sure if Tim had shared, we supported Walpole during this past year to rebuild their coalition and submit a drug-free communities grant. They were awarded a drug-free communities grant, and the health director, Melissa Ranieri, took that role on to above and beyond her full-time work, as Tim did years ago. And now Dedham has a drug-free grant. Walpole, Norwood was in our original SAPC. So our last community is Westwood, and we've been working with them throughout the summer to allocate specific funds they have to work with a consultant, and will be the wind beneath their wings and help Westwood as well with the goal. We're hoping that in April they'll submit a drug-free communities grant. And I mention that because Needham is our fiscal agent. I look at our grant, three legs of the stool. We answer to our funder, which is BSAS. We go to programs and meetings and trainings, and we do financial and programmatic reporting. But our fiscal agent is probably the sturdiest leg, and we do work and support the Needham Public Health Department with Tim and Tiffany. That leg of the stool this month, we did two memos that are in your packet, and Tiffany edited those and Tim. But it's, although we're funded by a grant, and I have been for 16 years as the fiscal agent with Needham, I answer and support the work of the town, in addition to going to the CCIT meetings and being engaged in certain programs. So the good news is we continue to be a liaison to different programs that BSAS asked us to go to, the Norfolk County Sheriff and the DA. And we just went to BID Needham's community benefits meeting, and I shared this with the staff. They allocated, according to John Fogarty, $4 million last year. So we continue to share the programs and funding and resources that are available here across the four towns, but especially in Needham. So our report's pretty detailed. I haven't been here in a while. That's sort of an 3,000-foot view, but we're always available to answer questions, and we appreciate the opportunity that Tim and Tiffany give us to continue to be our fiscal agent and let us do the
to do that. We are, let's see, we'll be a team of 6 when we're fully staffed. We've hired a public health nurse who will be half-time public health nursing for the Charles River and half-time a trainer. She'll be working for doing the training on housing inspections, on tanning inspections, on body art, on camps and the like. So we're very excited to have her on board. That's a great interest of all the other 3 communities, and I know it will be a help to our own public health nursing staff. Sam is actively out in the field now for folks in training hub region of the 43 communities. She's got 2 people going and starting a 3rd. She's really good to be doing that. Seems to be going well. And we look forward to getting to train the next year. And then I think what we're set up now to start our work with strategic planning. We do strategic planning. We guys been working with to figure.
Can you talk a little louder just because we lost the feed and the owl isn't recording, so it's actually Tiff's laptop.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So
Improvising.
So strategic planning work to, try, well, how does this collaborative want to work together? Do we want to do requests for services via a form? Are we going to do email requests? What kinds of tracking and reporting do people want to see in addition to the detailed reporting that we need to do for our funder? And, the addition of the nurse will be a great support for some of the things folks would like to be doing. And I need to talk to Carol, because one of the other things that the group is interested in is at least talking about how opioid settlement dollars are being used in their communities and trying to gather some information and potentially collaborate. I don't know.
I heard last night in the meeting that Association of Health Boards, if it's possible for the different communities to pool some of that money.
It is.
And not the combined program.
It is. So I'm eager to get that topic on our agenda once we have settled some of these governance things and at least talk about what are the things that are happening in each community and is there opportunity for pooling. So that will be we're geared up and ready to start getting even busier. Anybody have any questions about my report or what we said? Thank you again for sending the notes of support.
Just one thing I guess I would add, the chair of the select board voiced some concern about the idea that it requires both boards to sort of get out of the agreement. Given that we had already worked with and gotten approval from the boards of health in each community and 3 of the community's select boards, we couldn't make a change without unraveling the whole thing. I did say that I thought the Board of Health would be, if the select board has future concerns in a future year, the Board of Health would be happy to meet with them, and that it doesn't seem tenable long-term if one board wants to be part of the partnership, but another board doesn't, which I think is realistic. But we think there's value. It doesn't cost the taxpayers of Needham anything and they get benefit. So we think it works pretty well.
It gives it some recognition.
All right, back on schedule. Here's Tim, you wanted to talk about housing, and I'm guessing you want to talk about this Public Health Act as well.
Sure. So maybe I'll start with the Public Health Act. So I did send the board option to sign on to a letter that's going to go to the state legislature about SAFE 2.0. Statewide Accelerated Public Health for Everyone is the sort of new acronym, but it sets kind of minimum standards, credential requirements. It's about sort of bringing public health up to a sort of minimum operating level so that regardless of where you are geographically in the Commonwealth, you can be assured of competent public health services in all the foundational areas. So that, if you live in Lawrence and you'll have your food establishments inspected. If you're in Western Mass, you can have, your septic system regulated in a, appropriate and sort of competent way. So we think it's a very important thing for local public health. So if the board is interested in signing, there's a link to that The board last time voiced their support for most of the statement, the policy position statement, the draft that I had sent, with some additional discussion needed on the neighborhood housing plan. I did send an email just before the meeting that the Needham Housing Coalition is interested in asking whether the board wants to sign on to a letter to the community saying it supports the housing, the neighborhood housing plan, so the plan that is above the base compliance level. If the board wants to do that, it's a nice letter. I think the policy position statement sort of reflects the board's role as a body that's driven by data and science, and it talks about the important role that housing has as a social determinant of health. The sign-on is sort of but is a list of the organizations that support it, not the rationale why it's being supported. So I guess I would view them as not an either or, but an and.
Any discussion about that? I'm in favor of submitting the neighborhood best. It's the second, it's the more ambitious of the 2 plans. I think that we need to go above and beyond this, the fair move that we can do to satisfy the MBTA legislation. And there's a clear need for affordable housing. Just the real estate. And it's very, see others. Good job, I'm gonna make sure you hear us.
It's a little soft.
Okay, sorry, but if you have any comments, speak up, because it's a little soft on the laptop speakers as well, but we're trying. Because at our last meeting, we didn't have any specifics about the neighborhood plan, and the letter that we did, I think that you did draft for us is basically pretty much saying, yeah, we are really in support of this, but we're not going to come out and say it.
And I think that's a question of, is that how the board wants to position itself, or do they want to sort of unequivocally say you support the plan, or say, the board would suggest the town meeting adopt the base compliance plan, but not support the neighborhood plan? So I want to get direction from the board on which way you'd like to go.
So a couple of us would be there. My sense of the group, and you're all welcome to chime in, of course, was that, we want to go beyond the base plan. We don't necessarily want to support any specific plan. I mean, the neighborhood plan is one plan. We'll see how that's amended and it's sausage being made at town meeting. But, I think we could certainly stand up at town meeting as a Board of Health and say, look, we think we need to go beyond the base plan. What that looks like, I don't know if we need to wade into that or not. That was my sense last time, only because we did not have the actual specifics of, okay, what is this going to do? What is this provision going to do? What have you? What are the tweaks that we could make to it? But, it's been a month, so I'm not sure where people are now.
No, I agree with that. I mean,
Ed wants to do it.
I think, we definitely support both plans, but I think the one that we would support more would be the neighborhood housing plan, because I think that we should support more housing, because we know that that's an important social determinant of health.
Or maybe we support the neighborhood, we say we support for going beyond the base plan with a plan such as the neighborhood plan, or, some other version that, would also go beyond the base plan. I guess, Stephen, to your point is you think there may be modifications and things like that, just sort of being clear that we're, we support the neighborhood plan, but really our goal is we want to be beyond the base plan.
Yeah, it's almost guaranteed that there will be amendments, and amendments on amendments, and probably amendments on amendments and amendments.
It's going to be a long time.
Yes.
We don't know what the final thing is going to look like. Right.
But that could be, so if the board did want to support, as Tejal suggested, saying, we support the base compliance plan. We support, the aims of the neighborhood housing plan. We think town meeting needs to, make a strong statement, whether it's exactly the neighborhood plan or something similarly ambitious to try to address the
I
need.
mean, I think if they, if town meeting, adopted the neighborhood plan, we'd say, yes, good. If they adopted something similar to it, we'd say, yes, good, maybe other people would or wouldn't, or what have you. That's to be determined.
Right, but the concept of we want base compliance, then we want to go above and beyond base compliance.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the way I.
Okay. So I will work on wording on the policy position statement to make some changes to reflect that more directly. Does the board want to sign on to the concept of the community letter from the Needham Housing Coalition or no? Because that is less nuanced, I think, than what we just talked about.
Sent us because it's not in the packet.
No, it was like 10 of 6, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't see.
I mean, I think we should do our nuanced version that we just talked about.
Okay.
Because that one was definitely saying do neighborhood plan, right?
It was. Yeah.
We should vote for this, needs more housing. Inaction or passing on will have little if any effect on our current and the town act is now. It's. Yeah, I mean, it's more of a political statement than a some determinative health statement.
Yeah, and there's, yes, not much in the way of evidence in the statement, which I think is important when the board does take a policy position. There's evidence to back it up.
Yeah. So maybe we don't support this, we instead issue our own.
Mhm.
Publicize that, and let the housing authority know, let them know that.
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to do it.
Okay. Agreed. The Council on Aging is also going to, as Ed knows, put out a statement that is maybe less evidence-based than the Board of Health, but is still in the same vein of seniors need options. We want housing that is accessible. We want it to be affordable. We want, sort of all different price points. And I've made them look different enough that they don't sound like they were completely written by the same person.
Good. New business stuff.
I actually do have one if I can bring it up.
Okay.
Speaking of special town meeting, we are going back again to ask for the funding for the opioid settlement funds to utilize. The strategic plan was finalized as of last Wednesday or so. And so it will be in the special town meeting packet or wherever the town, sorry, I'm not versed to this. So wherever the town manager posts her information, it's in there right now, but I can also send it to you. Our goal is to ask for 82,000, thank you. To one, increase peer recovery services to a full-time position that will also help continue the action planning for the strategic plan. 2, more sandbox that we hope to do a grants pilot program with businesses and places we know that are used more often, that we've seen activity and that we've had overdoses in the past. And then 3 is $10,000 as an educational effort, basically to create programs. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet until we get the funding to be able to work on it, but create programs for youth. The goal is youth, families in need, and people with substance use disorder, specifically those areas, or those in recovery or getting to recovery, just so that we can really help those out. Some of those may be transportation needs, some of those may be programs geared to helping people understand, and some of that is also included to increase. We need to do more digging in the aspects of Needham's opioid needs, especially with the ages of 18 to 60, to figure out what those groups really need in Needham. So we'll be working on that as well throughout the next year. And then we'll hopefully get this on May cycle to then do it every year in May instead of special time meeting.
Link any of that to the successor.
Yes, so we use community health needs assessment in the data, and it is on our action planning for community health assessment and the CHIP, both.
Next number of years, we have a master plan.
Yeah.
This is the part of the master plan now that these funds could be used to actually implement at its time.
Yeah.
So they see it direct. This is not something out of the blue. This is something that's been planned for a long time. But now we have the funding that we should use appropriately.
And I think that's maybe the message we'll try to underscore to Finance Committee. Finance Committee has
Yeah,
lots of questions. or a sort of non-taxpayer related expenditure. So we do want to remind them that, yes, it is not something.
This is earmarked.
That Tiffany and I came up with in the
Yeah.
back of the napkins.
Yeah.
There was a long process and a lot of involvement from a number of parties.
So yeah, so I appreciate that. Just select board seems in support of the memo we wrote as well. So hopefully town meeting will also not have a problem with it.
Any other business?
I don't believe so. Our next meeting is November 22nd. Yep, we will try to find a location where the computer doesn't die at least once a meeting.
Chicago the night before.
Yeah. Let
Let you know.
And we'll obviously have the results of the ballot question and applicants. I will start working with the team now on the rewrites to the regulations that we talked about. And I wasn't here for it, but did you get to take notes? Steve had a couple specific points about tobacco. You did,
Yep,
great. Okay.
yeah.
Just want to make sure I reflect them.
So we're gonna leave that hearing, we left that hearing open, because I think Cheryl wants to weigh in as well.
Yes.
And then hopefully we'll go to a vote, and then we'll talk about it. We talked about delaying enforcement of that to allow an appropriate period of time for everybody to retool.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Any other business? If none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Okay. Seeing none opposed, we will accept that. Okay. We are adjourned at 8:27.
Not bad, huh? 2 minutes earlier. That was a come from behind.